Since it's displayed on a speaker, it seems to be, it's on bright. I put it,
Yeah.
because it's a display.
We'll see you as an expert.
Right.
But for the library?
You can do it.
Mark's not out there.
Probably not. I said my piece. I don't think they need. I don't think they need me to
I
repeat
think it
it.
is for this
But thank you.
situation, but-
I figured you catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
I think they're hiring safety people.
I went by to pick something up the other day. And one of the staff members said that they just hired. They just gotten through the hiring for 2
Right,
months.
right.
So that was good to hear. Moving in the right direction.
No, thanks for being so involved.
Yeah, I like that I now have the time to do that kind of thing before.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We will go ahead and get started. Today is March 26th, 2024. Welcome to the Great Falls International Airport Authority Board meeting. The mission of the Great Falls International Airport Authority is to optimize transportation services and development in our region. The vision of the Great Falls International Airport Authority is to maximize the airport's benefit to our region. Welcome to the public. Thank you for being here, as always. If you have anything to say, just please identify yourself. We'd love to hear what you have to say. I'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Aritz.
Present.
Commissioner Gibbs.
Here.
Commissioner Husted is absent. Commissioner Lalonde is here. Commissioner Hoven.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
And Commissioner Swathwood.
Here.
All right. With the quorum of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, starting with the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. This month, we have item A, approval of board meeting minutes from February 2024. Item B, payroll checks totaling $129,664.18 for February 2024. Item C, maintenance and operations checks number 28111 to 28142, totaling $1,430,059.69 for February 2024. Item D, approved passenger facility charge totaling $44,303.33 for February 2024. Item E, financial reports for February 2024. And item F, revised financial reports for November 2023, December 2023, and January 2024. Does any board member have any item they would like to pull for further discussion? All right, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion.
Got a motion? Any additional comments? Can I have a second?
One second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
And nay. The ayes have it. Director's report.
Yes, welcome everybody. Happy few last days of March. On the financial reports, you'll notice we've changed the format a little bit again. We're trying to get to something that I think I'm a little happier with, which now we'll have the operating revenue and operating expenses kind of subtotaled, so we can kind of see per plan how we're matching up to what we budgeted for. And then we've got a section kind of at the end where we bring in what I call the other income, the stuff we don't budget, our grant proceeds and things like that, which aren't part of the operating budget. And so I think this format's a little more helpful. When we get our grant inflows in, oftentimes they're more than our operating revenue, and so do we put them in the budget column so it doesn't look like we're 200% over budget, or how do we manage that? And so we've kind of laid this out a little bit differently this month. Shailene has done a good job of kind of coming up with a new format here, which I think I like. Specific to the results so far, you can see on page 1 of the financials, revenue is outperforming plan by almost 9%. That's primarily driven, almost exclusively driven by the passenger-related activities in the concession area, food, rental car, all that type of thing, and some pretty good growth in parking revenue. You may recall back to budget, we budgeted 1.2 million. I think we've only broken $1 million two times in all of our history in parking revenue. And so this year we went pretty aggressively, thinking we could get 1.2. Looks like we're gonna get there, so it'll be a record year for parking, I think, as long as things finish up the year strong in the last quarter. So that's positive. On the expense side, we're running right up against the budget. You can see over on page 3 of 6 that we're at 98% of operating budget. Our security contract continues to escalate pretty quickly. The cost of labor for a lot of businesses is escalating quickly, and we're seeing that in security. We don't contract that much security anymore since we've hired more people, but we still cover sick days, a few weekends here and there where we know someone's out of town, vacation, that type of stuff with contract security. And so we're seeing a pretty sizable increase in that contract. So we are going to be very close to the end of year budget, and we may have to come back with an amendment. Shailene's working on that right now to kind of figure out where we're going to end up on the operating income for the end of the year. But in the last couple of months, we did come back and ask for a little bit more money. As you may recall, and I know we've got some new board members probably since we've talked about budget, but my belief is that we need to budget conservatively and something we think is realistic. I hate the idea, and I've seen this in many airports I've been at, I hate the idea of padding for a bad winter or excessive overtime because of something you don't know what. You know, I think we're better off to budget what we think we can achieve and manage that as best we can when we have bad winters or when we have an escalated contract, like our cleaning contract last year or our security contract this year. We come back and ask the board for more money at the time, rather than getting to the end of the year and we have a lot of extra money and we're trying to figure out how to spend it, which I don't love. So we're going to be close this year, and like I said, we may come back and ask for a little bit more. On the traffic front, traffic continues to be strong. As we 2 months through the year, we're stacking up to be a little bit stronger than 2019. Looks like it will be a year very similar to a couple of our record years back in 15 and 14. By the time we get to summer, we're going to have about 8% more seats than we had pre-COVID. We had a few more than that last summer, which we didn't fill. But hopefully this summer demand will be a little bit stronger and we'll get those planes full and finish out the year strong. So far, looking like a very strong spring, and hopefully in the first part of summer, finish up the fiscal year in our top 1 to 3 years, somewhere in there, and look forward to a pretty strong new year next year. We've got Jumpstart meetings coming up in May. That's our annual conference, the big national annual conference, where we get the opportunity to meet with the airline route planners. I believe they're up to a list of about 20-some airlines that are going to attend that. Typically, we don't waste time meeting with Land Chile and some of the ones that aren't coming here, but we try to get meetings with all the existing carriers, and usually Southwest will take a meeting with us. We hope to get a meeting with American, Velo, and Reese for new potential new airlines. We asked for a meeting with Sun Country also. They typically take meetings with us. Even between times when there aren't meetings, most of those route planners we know really well. Our consultant will be there too, who is actually an American planner before they started consulting, and he knows a lot of the analysts too. And so between the actual meeting times and what we call speed dating, you get a half hour with each airline, then you change tables. For social events during the conference, we'll get a chance to meet and talk to a number of those airlines that we'll even get meetings with. So a really important event for us to kind of go over performance of the routes as the airlines see it. It gives us our first kind of indication how the last year was from the airline perspective. Obviously, we don't get their cost information. We don't even really get a good, solid idea how the revenue looks. And so it's a really good time to meet with our existing carriers and find out how they see the market, and then also meet with the new prospects and tell them about the potential for growth in Great Falls as we get these missile upgrades in the next 6 years, and other things in our market that are happening. And so those meetings will be at the end of May. We should find out in the next 2 weeks, I think, what airlines have accepted our invitation to go online and say, I'd like these guys, and then they have to go in on their end and say, I'll take those guys, and then you kind of see what you get after that. So Hopefully we'll get a full slate, 9 meetings or so, that's the max you can get in the speed dating part of the conference, and then you get an opportunity to socialize after. So looking forward to replenishing some of those relationships and seeing those guys in May. For summer, it looks like we're going to have the additional Alaska flight, and that's about it. We continue to have some conversations with a couple airlines, but it's looking more like 25 for new service. That's the last year of our normal years of the SCASB grant, so it'll be an important year. We got the amendment in December of this last year that allows us to go after LA service, and so that kind of came late in the route planning year to talk to the airlines. We were telling them we were applying, of course we didn't know anything. Our consultant really was skeptical we would get the amendment, but we did. So now coming into the new year, that would give us a brand new opportunity to present those California opportunities to all the airlines. I think really all of our carriers, possibly with the exception of Delta, because they don't have a lot of California service in Montana, but all of our carriers are potential targets for that, and we have a pretty healthy incentive base for that. So hopefully productive conversations at that event in May. We're continuing to work on a CBP, Customs Border Patrol Coalition. We've gathered the signatures of 9 airports. Last week we sent out a letter to the CBP regional office in Seattle with those 9 airports co-signing, representing 3 states. All the delegations were CC'd. I had one meeting this morning with a delegation member from Montana to kind of get them up to speed on what's going on. As you recall, CBP announced earlier this year that they're going to stop taking overnight flights. You can sign up for a program called RSP, which is the reservation, I'm going to forget that acronym.
Reimbursement service.
Reimbursement service program, yeah. And what that is if you sign up for that, you can pay to have customs service overnight. You're basically paying the double time cost of the agent to come in and process the plane. And so that program's been around for a while. It's frequently used in airports that may not have their own customs person. Like for example in Colorado, some of the smaller airports like Rocky may not even have a customs person assigned to the airport, but occasionally they can take evening flights by getting someone to come over from Denver, from GFIAA, and process that flight. And so that's when you would see an RSP program. We actually have a customs office. Traditionally, CBP has taken most of the evening requests for service into an airport like us and process them. They're looking to change that and require compensation. We think the cost is somewhere around $500 per flight, which we do believe could impede some of that traffic. We get about 900 international flights a year. 20% of those are overnight, we're told. So it is an important part of our business. And so in particular, the one flight we're very concerned about is the FedEx flight, which has been a scheduled flight now for nearly 30 years. And so we'd really like to see CBP continue to cover that flight. FedEx estimates their cost about $18,000 a year from the RSP program that they're required to pay. And so that's a substantial amount when you look at it from that perspective. And like every organization, when you're going through a cost-cutting time, you look for anything you can carve out, and the value of stopping that flight in Great Falls may not be worth it when they've got to pay that landing fee and all the other associated costs of servicing that flight here in town. So we'll continue to push back on that. We've garnered some support from the the state airport operators associations in North Dakota and Washington, and so I believe they're going to write their own letter. The National Business Aviation Association is considering joining that letter, and so we would have a trade association that might sign on and also ask for this program to be waylaid until the issue can be studied and a more equitable solution identified. Our talking points really revolve around, look, once you hurt this business, it doesn't come back. It's not something you can turn off and on like a stove. When you lose these relationships, it's very difficult to get them again for these international flights. And we feel that, the 24-hour airports like a Seattle or somewhere like that, there's times a day where that CBP revenue stream isn't covering their costs either. I mean, CBP doesn't ask for reimbursement from any of those flights at a 24-hour airport, so why are they asking for reimbursement here? In a sense, we're going to be a new revenue source which could be used for CBP anyway. And so that seems a little inequitable, And I can tell you right now, I could call one of 3 or 4 large airport hub managers that I know, and I can guarantee you, they don't want these extra small planes running around their airport in the middle of the night. Those airports that have 24-hour flights are very busy. In Seattle, the cargo flights can wait 2 to 4 hours before they're processed, even when they arrive in the middle of the night. The last thing they want is a little single engine sitting there waiting for mom and pa to get cleared in the middle of that mess. The airport doesn't want the traffic. CBP doesn't want the traffic. And so anything we can do to prevent more of those flights flooding into those places seems to make sense. And so we'll have a good conversation with our delegation. I know the other airports on our television will have a good conversation with their delegation, and hopefully we can have a good group conversation with CBP about some other options. At a minimum, our opinion is if we're doing this anywhere, we ought to do it everywhere. It's not typical of the federal government to say, hey, one region gets charged, but another one doesn't. And then, our other question is too, well, who's determining what the charge should be and ensuring that it's correct, right? I mean, is one airport going to charge when the officer wakes up at 3 in the morning to come in? Is another airport going to charge for 2 people? How do we ensure that there's equity in what's being charged? And so, some work to do there, but we've gotten the ball rolling, we've got the letter out, and we're starting to push back. It's most of the North Dakota airports, all the international ones, Fargo, which is Hector, of course. Fargo, Grand Forks, I'm going to forget one over there. Williston, yeah, I was going to say Minot, but that's not right, it's Williston. Bellingham up in Washington. I think we might ultimately have King County sign on also. And then Helena and Glacier Park and us. Yeah, so good group. FAA has hiring coming out next month, what they call an on-ramping for new air traffic controllers. And we've been getting the word out about that. I sent the information over to the high school last week, and then I contacted MSU Great Falls to let them know about it too. We posted it on all of our Facebook outlets, trying to get people interested in that program. Some years ago, the FAA, much like many of the federal agencies, moved the schoolhouse to a central location where you used to be able to do some of the education in Embry-Riddle or a school like that with flight program. Now you have to do it in OKC, air traffic school, and like any program, when you centralize it, you get less participation. And so there is a shortage of ATC folks around the country because most of the population is not in Montana in the country. Most of the applicants aren't from Montana in the country, and many of them aren't interested in coming to Montana. And so we have a hard time when there are postings in that system because we have a relatively quiet tower. Our pay codes are lower than, say, Los Angeles or Dayton, Ohio, or something like that, where you have a fairly high pay grade. And so our positions are not competitive when the folks are graduating the schoolhouse. The way it's being described to me now, you might have 8 new graduates and you might have 12 positions. And so oftentimes our positions are falling below where you have enough graduates to cover them, so we're not getting new recruits. When we do get a new recruit, oftentimes they choose based on their academic standing, and so sometimes those folks at the end get stuck, so to speak, with a location, and so we end up with folks from well outside our region who are interested in the winter and things like that. And so as they finish their certification as an actual tower worker, so you finish school, you go, you work for 2 years, now you're a full-grown air traffic controller. We see people leave in a lot of cases right after that. And so we're hopeful that by getting these positions out in the community, we can attract local folks that are interested in that career path and potentially have some homegrown ATC folks that want to stay in our community and populate some of those jobs in the tower. And so we're trying to get the word out pretty broadly to help with that. We're about 6 positions low. The way that manifests is, and we still, I don't think, have fully gotten all the answers we've asked, but we have a Category 3 approach, which allows you to fly in extreme low conditions. Not every airline is equipped to fly that. Very few are. But without the tower, we can't operate that entire system, and so we basically go to a standard approach. And the minimums go up dramatically, and so there are many times where we're not going to be able to accommodate flights. Not only can we not accommodate our flights, but oftentimes we're the rescue airport for most of Montana when conditions are bad. So we get the Billings, the Bozeman, the Kalispell overnight, because they can't, they're stuck in Minneapolis, all of them are stuck there, and they can't get out, and so, oh, we can get into Great Falls, so they come. So Sunday night, we had a plane stuck in Minneapolis, the tower checked out at 10:30, it was an 11:30 flight, and we couldn't get in. And so we stranded 76 Great Falls passengers in Minneapolis Sunday night, because the minimums were below what you could fly without a tower. Just a standard ILS approach is substantially less capable than what we have. And so now we are starting to see the cutting edge of this problem with the power stack. So,
Is anybody tracking the data, like from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? Is anybody tracking the traffic?
how much traffic there is, the tower has that information. Yeah, but even the tower, I mean, it was interesting, I mean, we all have our pigeonholes, right? And so when we talked to Salt Lake Center about this, I think you were there, Dwight, were you? We talked to Salt Lake Center about this, even their perspective on what the traffic isn't quite accurate, because they said, well, listen, it's not just the, because they said, well, you guys have virtually no landings overnight. I said, no, what? Yeah, you know, I mean, there aren't that many landings compared to a busier airport, but we have a lot of low elevation flying that doesn't ever touch the airport. We've got all that helo traffic, and it's gonna be even increased as we get these new helos where they have to get their hours in. You know, so we're gonna have all of this new low-level traffic in there with overflight over top of it. You know, then you've got care flight and other things that need to operate too, and without anyone here, you know, can we really be the emergency landing strip for mountain? If they're, for whatever reason, unable to land at their airport, you know, I mean, what does that do for them over here? You know, and so it really is a trickier airspace, I think, than what they're thinking of it as. And so it's going to be 6 months, they think. The initial look ahead at this, where we're going to have some overnight shortages, and then hopefully they'll be able to hire in some positions. Hopefully in that time we can help by on-ramping some people here locally to start, you know, stuffing that pipeline with some people that are likely to come back. And hopefully that situation will improve. And I also see there is a bill out, they're trying to improve pay for ATC workers. I don't know if you noticed that one last week too, right? But, you know, there's some things in the works that could help this whole equation. In the meantime, we just want to make sure the word is out there. I know somebody told me, Delta Public Affairs is going to make some calls based on what we had last week, and just see if there's anything they can do from their end. But it is right now a physical problem, we just simply don't have the bodies, but it's a longer term problem of we need to get the pipeline full.
Is there any threat to those routes long term? That hasn't changed?
No, I mean, Kalispell's been operating this way for a long time. Of course, they don't have the overnight traffic like we do with the helicopters flying around and that kind of thing. And Bozeman closes at, I think, 10:30. You know, they're, of course, now a pretty busy airport. And so, I mean, there are ways to operate. It just means you're going to have a lot more diversions. You know, and I mean, what's even worse, in my opinion, is now you have this big dark hole, you know, in the middle of the country where more or less Montana's closed at night. You know, I mean, that doesn't sound great, right? And we got a northern border up there, and you know, all kinds of stuff, and yet there's nobody manning an air traffic control station more or less overnight, and so.
So we've got no CPP, we've got no tower. We're talking about some guys sneaking in.
Well,
Security standard.
even when we had those things, we had an Air Mexico flight land one night and tool around the airport for a while, you know, a few years ago looking for fuel.
Yeah, and just to add to that, from my perspective, almost every night, the Mercy Flight jet, it's on contract with benefits, has 2 call-outs during the night. So they're operating with medical crew and patients on board. There's almost always every night, there's one additional flight that either comes from Glasgow or from Kalispell, bringing and transporting patients to Great Falls. In addition to that, there's 2 flights that are moving the mail during the course of the night. Happens almost every night. And then again, I was here Sunday morning with snow removal and was listening to the 2 Delta flights depart in the morning with no tower. You know, with all their 70 passengers on board.
I was working late.
And there's snow removal
Yeah.
operations.
And I was working late Saturday night and moving snow and listening to my guys having to interact with those pilots directly. And, you know, I mean, they're doing their best. but, you know, we don't have to look too far back. It was just before Christmas that, you know, JetBlue about piled into the clean air at an uncontrolled airport at Steamboat Springs. And that plane actually hit the ground with its tail going to max thrust. And, you know, I mean, that's 150, 200 people right there that were put in extreme jeopardy. You know, so I mean, towers make a difference, why we have them. You know, and so there are logical solutions. I mean, I think, you know, we've gone so far away from having things that make sense, I think, in terms of, you know, these programs, but Helena doesn't have a ground radar. You know, so basically Salt Lake Center can't see anything below mountain height, which is probably, what, 1,500, 2,000 feet? Something like that. I mean, it's more or less blind below that, right? And so they've been trying to get a surface radar. If that surface radar can be monitored here, along with Kalispell, because there's a lot of interchange between Great Falls and Kalispell, overflights that are going east to west, for example, and even overflight coming from Helena north to south, you know, then you could monitor that traffic here as opposed to monitoring it in Salt Lake. You know, and that would give you a lot more local access to that traffic. You could do a little bit more responsive time because not watching the entire region. I think those are logical things that the airports are working on together to try and see happen. I think that makes a lot more sense because then, you know, we could have the TRACON here monitoring a lot of that traffic and doing something productive in those hours, even though they're not that busy. But you get the added benefit of monitoring local traffic while you're monitoring some of the regional traffic and have a lot better service level in Helena and Kalispell and other places. And so hopefully something like that will prevail. You know, and so again, another thing we hope to elevate to our delegation to talk about more and more and team together, you know, as a region to say, these are common sense solutions that we ought to be considering. On the construction, as you can see, the signage program is wrapping up. We should be putting up the last couple signs in the next week or so. Those are all the outdoor signs, the indoor signs on the first floor. There will be a smaller signage component to the second floor when we get into that remodel later this year. We're getting rid of the letters across the blue band on that second floor will be replaced with actual signs. And that blue band will go away. And so that'll take place over the summer, but this signage program is about done. You probably noticed that the tents downstairs, the canopy project is well underway. I was talking to the construction crew this morning. They're getting very close to finishing the terrazzo in the bag claim area. And so that should be reopening the bag claim 1 down there anytime now, and that terrazzo ready to go. And then we'll move over to the bag claim 2 area, temp that off, and begin grinding out that glue. We've still got to get them word on what we want to do. We found, underneath that carpet, we found kind of 2 anomalies. There's a floor slope that's way too slopey by the men's bathroom down there in bag claim, and so we have to kind of terrazzo that out a little bit and slow the slope down. In addition, there's an old elevator, which I'd never heard before, but apparently there was some kind of person lift type elevator that's set on the floor next to one of the columns down there. And so they had dug out the terrazzo and put in a concrete pad. So we got to bust that out and re-terrazzo that. It's right in the middle of the floor in between the 2 bag planes. And so that work will have to be done. We've just got to give them the go-ahead on what to do with that. But I think that I'm really impressed with how much that terrazzo is lightening up that area quite a bit. You know, real durable surface. It's not particularly loud in there. I've spent quite a bit of time in the last couple of weeks in there, just kind of watching them work, and I'm surprised. I thought it would be kind of echoey, but it's not. So I'm pretty pleased with that decision because now that new floor buffer we have, we'll be able to clean that surface once or twice a week without any personnel, and it drives itself. So rather than having the janitor down there with a 12-inch vacuum, you know, for a morning, you know, the automated machine will be able to scrub that area up. So I think that's going to be a nice improvement. Parts are on order for the rest of the canopy. They should begin that work as soon as we get decent temperatures and some of the equipment in to start on that. And then we'll begin on the revamping that out front. Bids are due, what are bids due on the second floor? Is that this? 29th, yep, this month. So, and that'll be the fireplace, the second floor carpeting, all of the